Hey, hey, hey. Time for another Out of This World story from rSpace. Today on rSpace, anyone who promises you the moon is a fool. Seriously, if someone tells you they can get you the moon, you should run fast in the opposite direction. Up first, ever had one of those relationships where everything seemed perfect until it wasn't? Look no further. She betrayed me when I needed her most, then asked for therapy to lessen her guilt. I never thought I'd be writing this, but I need to get it off my chest. I was in a 4-year relationship with a woman I once admired, not for her looks, which, to be honest, never immediately attracted me, but for the connection I thought we had, for the promises she made, and for the future we had envisioned together. I fell for her gradually, believing that what we were building was real, and when I gave her my heart, I never expected that she would crush it so brutally. We met, fell for each other, and in the first year of our relationship, we lived together. I was preparing to leave for my master's abroad, but I made it clear from day one, I wasn't looking for something casual. I was in it for the long term, and I was willing to make the effort in a long-distance relationship. She agreed. The only thing she ever asked of me was to visit her often. I understood that. It was a reasonable ask coming out of a live-in relationship. But my reality was harsh. I was pursuing a highly intense degree abroad, juggling a full-time student workload with a part-time research job, and managing the challenges of living as an expat. Despite all this, I did visit her, as often as I could, but it was never enough for her. She never acknowledged or appreciated the effort I put in. It was as if no matter how much I did, she had already made up her mind that it wasn't enough. But I had to make choices. I was building my future, not just for myself, but for us. I wanted to be independent, to be in a position where I could meet her parents respectfully, where we would have a good life together. And she should have understood this. She was a student too, a medical student. She knew the grind, the sacrifices that had to be made. But instead of seeing my efforts, instead of standing by me, she chose herself, and then chose someone else. And the timing of it all makes it even more painful. The cheating happened on New Year's Eve. I was alone in a foreign country, waiting for her to call me so we could celebrate in whatever way we could from a distance. I had chosen not to make plans with my friends here because I wanted to prioritize the relationship. I didn't want to do anything without her. And what did she do? She kissed another guy that night. That wasn't an accident. That wasn't a moment of weakness. That was a choice. And her first reaction to me calling it quits because of her disloyalty was to open up the relationship. The amount of crap this person could speak just to avoid any sort of accountability is just bizarre to me. And then, just a few days before my birthday, she slept with the same guy. That was my birthday gift from her. The news that she had given her body to someone else. The body that she once told me was only for me. The body that she had made sacred promises about. And she didn't just promise these things in words. She had taken me to our temples, places that our families deeply regard as sacred, and made promises about a future together. She involved both our families in our relationship. Her family approved of me. They knew about me. They expected to meet me as a potential future husband. And she made her commitment to me even more real by giving me her grandmother's ring, a family heirloom, as a promise ring. This wasn't just any piece of jewelry. This was a symbol of our future, a representation of trust and loyalty, something that carried the weight of generations in her family. And yet, despite all of that, she still chose to betray me in the most humiliating way possible. At first, she only admitted to kissing the guy. The next morning, she called me crying, acting confused, barely admitting what she had done. When I confronted her and told her I was done, she didn't try to fix things. Instead, she went ahead and slept with him. And here's the kicker. While she was in bed with him, she moaned my name and confessed this to me on my birthday. She was literally betraying me, but her mind was still on me. If that isn't proof of how lost, confused, and messed up she was, I don't know what is. And then after all of that, after betraying me in the most humiliating way possible, she suddenly had a realization. Maybe I'm not over my ex-boyfriend yet. So she came crawling back, suggesting couples therapy, not because she genuinely wanted to fix what was broken, but because she needed to lessen her guilt. She needed a way to make herself feel like she wasn't the villain in this story. And her friends? They blindly defended her. None of them told her she was wrong. None of them called her out. Instead, they focused on me, saying that calling her actions slutty was out of line, completely ignoring the actual betrayal she committed. Her own parents barely reacted. Her father just said, "Good guys are rare to come by." Her mother? No real reaction. She faced zero consequences from the people around her. Meanwhile, I was the one left shattered, humiliated, trying to make sense of how the person I loved could do this to me. And then there's the ultimate irony. This is a woman who wept over a fictional dog dying in A Dog's Purpose years ago. And when my real-life dog, the one who had saved me, the one I loved more than anything, passed away, she had zero empathy. Her only response? I am posted in a morgue. I see death every day. It doesn't affect me anymore. And then she went out partying almost every day throughout the week when my dog passed away. She never truly cared about my pain. She was never really there for me. The last 6 months of our relationship, I felt like I was stranded alone and emotionally neglected. And now, looking back, I realize that's because she had already checked out. But here's what makes all this even worse. I was already struggling with severe depression when she did this to me. My mental health had taken a massive hit. I had told her this. I had been honest about my struggles, and she, as a doctor, should have had at least some basic human compassion. But she didn't. She was cold, distant, and unavailable. She chose to betray me instead of being there for me when I needed her most. And I had even given her an out. Long before my dog passed away, when my depression started getting worse, I told her that if she felt she couldn't handle being with someone going through this, I would understand. I wouldn't judge her if she walked away. I told her this multiple times, but she chose to stay. Not necessarily be there for me or even put in any effort at all to be there, but she just stayed until she found someone else to sleep with. I don't really understand why did I even let this happen to me. I don't know if people like her ever find happiness. A part of me wants to wish her healing and peace because I want to be the bigger person, but another part of me, the hurt, raw, betrayed part of me, wants her to suffer, to feel just an ounce of the pain she's putting me through, to realize too late that she threw away something real. I'm writing this because I need to let it out, and if anyone has ever gone through something similar, I need to know. How do you move past the betrayal like this? How do you reclaim your self-worth when someone you trusted completely trampled all over it? Because right now, it feels like I'll never be able to think of love the same way again. Oof. Sorry, OP. You tried to make it work, even when it wasn't easy. Honestly, you gave her a whole lot more than anyone else would have. And what did you get in return? A cold betrayal on New Year's Eve and the gut punch of hearing about it on your birthday. Not only that, but it's one thing to let down a partner, but to do it when they're vulnerable and already feeling isolated and not in the best place mentally? She's the worst kind of person there is. Moving on isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about recognizing that you didn't deserve this and deciding that you're worth more than the treatment you got. You'll find your way through this, OP. Let's ask you, how do you move past a betrayal like this? How do you reclaim your self-worth when someone you trusted completely trampled all over it? Up next, OP was just stopping by for a little surprise visit. I can't believe I caught him. Update to follow. I'm still so numb, I never suspected a thing. We normally connect on Thursdays, as well as other days per the week. But this Thursday, yesterday, he told me he was meeting up with his dad to watch the game. No biggie. I was happy for him. I ended up snagging an overtime shift to kill the time. I'm a first responder and thought I'd surprise him by stopping in. Always been an open door policy. He encouraged it. I walked up to the door after parking in the garage and found it locked. His truck was there, lights on. I'm confused. It's 4:15 a.m. I start trying to call him. He lives an hour from me, 45 minutes from my work. Going home barely crossed my mind. I want to see my man. I called 4 times. I'm picturing he's sleeping right through every call. I walk over to the bedroom window and tap lightly, then head back to the door and knocked. I could hear the dog whining. He loves me and wanted to be let out to me. A man finally comes to the door. He seemed frazzled. Eyes were bloodshot. I'm thinking I just woke him up. I start apologizing, sorry for waking him. I just really wanted to see him. As I'm reaching to wrap my arms around his neck and kiss him, he stops me. I'm confused. I can't. What? What do you mean? Are you sick? There's someone here. The gears were slow to process this. Who? His dad? His daughters? Wait, in your bed? Yes. What? What the F? I'm not convinced. He's lying, right? I'm standing here, an hour from home, at 4:30 in the morning, being told that my boyfriend has another woman in his bed. 2 weeks ago, he's hinting at marriage. What the F happened? Why? I'm so dumbfounded. I made it home safe after packing 70% of my things. He had to pack my bag for me since there was another woman in his bed who definitely heard the interaction. While he gave me half-butted apologies, while he also was trying to blame me for what he did. You've been off for 2 weeks. And that he planned to end things this weekend, citing, we aren't compatible, which was a surprise considering the sex and I love yous. I cannot believe this. I feel so used and stupid. I know it's trying to make sense of nonsense. I just feel sick. Update. Many were asking how long we were together. It was only 6 months, so thankfully nothing too long, I guess. My ex had an affair on me after 10 years together, and it was absolutely devastating. We had to work it out for almost 2 years, but we agreed it wasn't working and split. This was my first relationship after that. So I went back for my things about 12 hours later. One of my male coworkers with a truck drove me, and I'm so glad he did. I'd been awake for 30 hours and wasn't comfortable driving, let alone going alone. It was a good chance at reflection. I was dismissing red flags. He spoke a big game, but wouldn't always follow through on the emotional support, which I really needed my support circle being a paramedic. But I started noticing he always turned that convo to be back about him. He didn't have a stable job and was complaining he never saw his kids. They're 1.5 hours away. He always spoke poorly about how his dad cheated on his mom for years, destroying the family, and he'd never wanted to do that with his ex-wife, and because he wanted to, they eventually split, let alone anyone he was with. Promised he'd never put me through what my ex did. He always spoke about how he is all about communication, and he has emotional intelligence, something most people don't have. Then, I thought back to when we first got together. His buddy, a mutual buddy who was shipping us getting together for years before we finally did, pointed out his current friend the day after we slept together. At the time, I thought we were a one-time thing, and I didn't know what to make of that comment. I regret now not approaching her and asking. A hey girl moment. It would have confirmed my suspicions now that he just sticks around for the fun part, adrenaline of a new fling that might include cheating and the honeymoon phase, and leaves when things get hard or real. When I arrived to collect my things, I didn't just walk in. I knocked and waited, and the moment he opened the door, I was angry. I started collecting the things I'd left. Mind you, I realized how much I ended up buying for this place. Vacuum, steamer, countertop dishwasher, kitchen island trolley, air purifier, he used to smoke in the house, and all sorts of other things to make the house a home. Things his daughters loved. I wanted to go fully petty mode and take the entry rugs and the garbage can and the shower filter. He lives in the country and is on a well, but I didn't. During all this collection, I mentioned a few things. I called him a coward. He wasn't man enough to just talk to me first. Told him his worst fear about turning out like his dad came true, and I hope he's proud of himself. He was defensive right away, saying because I'd been off, he was going back through his checklist and I wasn't meeting what he needed. Said I was ghosting him and he needed to see and hear from me more. I asked how 2 to 3 times a week wasn't enough, and he said this last week it wasn't. So I asked him how come that was my responsibility. For 6 months, I would drive the 2 hours round trip to stay there 2 to 5 nights a week? Where's the balance? He only came into the city 3 times in 6 months, and once was out of convenience for him. He met me for dinner, and he was already in the city for other plans. This man then had the audacity to state, "Oh, so you're keeping score?" For the record, I worked 3 jobs: full-time paramedic, part-time admin for a hospital, and I ref semi-pro hockey. He knew this before we got together, and we talked about me leaving one job if we committed, and I had some help in security, financial, with my dogs. After 3 months of dating, I bought a calendar and wrote it all out for him so he could see when I was where, and we could plan accordingly. I asked him if it made his ability to cheat easier. He said he isn't like that. This was the first and only time, and he was going to tell me when he broke up with me on Sunday. I asked how much overlap there was between me and his last girlfriend. He denies having one before me. I remember him texting me he had loose ends to tie up, but that he wanted to be exclusive and give this a go. So I asked what exactly that meant, and he told me exactly that. During the whole thing, I started second-guessing myself, questioning my grasp on the situation. He kept telling me I was short and barely replied to his messages, that he didn't want to be with someone who ghosted him. I guess sleeping between night shifts was a big no-no for him. I scrolled back through my phone and our messages asking him where the ghosting was, and he then tried to change the subject. Caught in another lie, I guess. I asked how he'd feel if we switched up the roles. Then I asked, imagine it was one of your daughters who drove an hour excited to see her man, to find him the way I found you. Then she had to drive an hour home, bawling her eyes out after being gutted and then blamed for his actions. He just stared at the floor saying, I wasn't thinking. I did start teetering though, questioning my reality. He kept saying I showed up here always in a sour mood. I asked for dates that happened, which didn't include Valentine's Day. I recognized I wasn't great company that day and I was in one hell of a low mentally, and I did tell him that, and he couldn't give me examples. He started saying I've always been in fight or flight mode with him. I still couldn't believe what I was hearing. When I was ready to start collecting the big things, he asked if I needed help. Without hesitation, I said, nope, I have my friends to help me. To which he snarkily replied, oh right, you never need help. And I said, right, actually just not from you. After I collected all my things, I turned back and said, I really do love you, you know. This is crap. And left. and cracked as soon as I got back in the truck, bawling all over again. I'm thankful my friend and coworker were there. He was able to confirm to me this man was gaslighting me, and he brought up all the instances that he was contradicting himself. He reminded me of all the things I am and have done for this man, and no reciprocation, like driving 2 hours round trip, an hour after a 12-hour overnight shift, and not to cry too much over a man who let me do all that without any sort of reciprocation or appreciation, because a real man wouldn't have treated me like any of this. Man, I'm lucky to have friends like him. The devastation is different than with my ex. I still love my ex. He was my best friend and still is. I was able to conceptualize his affair. Our relationship was hitting a dysfunctional level, and it doesn't justify it, but I know we were both troubled and suffering, self-destructing in our own ways. Don't get me wrong, I was devastated, bedridden, not eating for weeks, requiring medical intervention. Crazy, that's what knocked me down, and not the crazy stuff I deal with at work. This situation is now confusing and still a betrayal, but different. I finally passed out last night after 36 hours of functioning. I don't know how, but sleep has been hard. I wake up grieving the life he promised and the pangs of betrayal. Knowing he's gone, it became my routine, but it's already getting better. Thanks to all of your replying and providing support. I've taken the advice everyone has to offer, and I hope I don't hear from him again, but will continue to ghost him if he does. But for real this time. I've never posted to Reddit before, but dang, this has been therapeutic, and I really appreciate the time you've all taken to read and comment. It's wild how someone can promise you the world and then turn around and betray you like that, but honestly not surprised. You tried to communicate, you made the effort, and you showed up. Meanwhile, he couldn't even show up for you, and when it mattered the most. Stick to your guns and don't go back to this guy, and he's not your best friend, and shouldn't still be. Your best friend wouldn't ever hurt you like that. Thoughts? And thank you for joining us today on rSpace. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. See you soon.